The Giants' rotation was already having its problems, and then they lose 40% of their starters on one night to the injured list. We'll talk all about it and how the Giants can survive this stretch on today's Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants Baseball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. So on today's show, we're going to be talking about, like I said, the Giants losing 40% of their starting rotation. And yes, that just means 2 out of the 5 to the injured list prior to last night's game, including the guy who was supposed to start last night, Johnny Cueto. So the situation is that Cueto is ill, but testing negative for COVID-19, and Alex Wood tested positive, and he is exhibiting symptoms. So obviously this is like bigger than baseball when we're talking about this kind of stuff, but we're mostly going to focus on the baseball ramifications. The Giants lost the 2 starters who were supposed to start last night and tonight on Tuesday at a critical time. They're playing the Brewers right now, and then they're going to play the Dodgers, and obviously we're going to flip the calendar to September tomorrow. So this is not the time the Giants want to be losing their starting rotation. They also claimed Jose Quintana off waivers from the Angels yesterday. So we'll talk all about what the Giants are going to do in the rotation, and also last night's really frustrating game, a game against a really good Brewers team going up against Corbin Burnes, arguably one of the 2 or 3 best starting pitchers in the game, and he looked like it last night. But the Giants had some opportunities, hit the ball hard numerous times, but had nothing to show for it. They hit into a lot of bad luck, a couple bullets off the bat of Lamont Wade Jr., found gloves, and then a critical Darren Ruff drive late in the game, I think it was the 7th inning, that found Christian Yelich's glove in left field. So we'll get into all of that and, previewing the rest of this series, as, the Giants were not able to lower their magic number last night, and in fact the Dodgers gained a game on the Giants. That's how they weren't able to lower that number. So that number to clinch the West remains at 30, and we'll talk about my expectations for the division and how I think it should be something that we still expect, that the Dodgers very well could win this division. Like, to expect that it's the Giants' division to lose, I think, is a mistake, and it's still the Dodgers' division to lose, even though the Giants have led it for so long. So I know I'm saying, we'll talk about this, we'll talk about this. Let's actually talk about what's going on with the starting rotation. As I said, Johnny Cueto is ill, but testing negative for COVID-19. So the Giants' hope is that Cueto can return and possibly start as soon as tonight on Tuesday. By the time you're listening to this, we may have had an update about Cueto's status, but hopefully he continues to test negative and then he can come back much more quickly. The protocols are different for players who test positive for COVID-19. I believe there's a minimum stay. I'm actually not entirely sure, because up to this point, the Giants had avoided COVID-19 IL stints by their players for most of the season all of the season until Donovan Solano and now Alex Wood. And then we've got Cueto exhibiting symptoms as well. So the Giants went with a bullpen game last night, and it was kind of a heroic effort. Jose Alvarez, who has just been so good and so consistent after a slow start, he did not have a good start making the start. That's kind of a lot to say there, but Jose Alvarez got the start. It was a bullpen game. He ended up going an inning and 2/3, allowed 4 hits and 2 runs, 2 walks, no strikeouts. So he did not have the type of command we've gotten used to seeing from Jose Alvarez, the type of command that has led him to being so successful this season. Even with the 2 runs in an inning and 2/3, his ERA on the season is just 2.39. So he's been fantastic. I don't know if I'm ready to chalk up his, you know, struggles in last night's game to just simply being geeked up about a start, although it's entirely possible. But just an uncharacteristically poor outing for Alvarez. But then the rest of the bullpen was pretty much scoreless the rest of the way. Actually, Dominic Leone had a difficult inning with a walk and 2 hits and did allow a run. But Jay Jackson got a strikeout in a third of an inning. Harleen Garcia was the hero of the night in the bullpen. 3 2/3, 4 strikeouts, 1 hit, no walks, no runs allowed. So Garcia's been masterful this season. The bullpen as a whole has just been really good. Zach Littell gave up 2 hits in a third of an inning, but no runs, and then a clean inning for Watson and a clean inning for John Brebbia, who was recalled prior to this game along with Jason Vossler as Cueto and Wood went on the injured list. So Gabe Kapler on today's or yesterday's news about losing these starters, particularly Alex Wood, who's going to have to miss some time. Cueto, they remain hopeful, as I've said. But Kapler said, quote, "I think it's a real concern. That doesn't make us unique in any way. We know a lot of clubs have dealt with the virus and dealt with it successfully." And so, I mean, to say it's a real concern is kind of an understatement, particularly if Cueto isn't able to go for a while. This rotation was already thinned out and wobbly. Like, we're already seeing Anthony DeSclafani, dealing with a little bit of an injury, and then he didn't pitch very well in his last start coming off the IL with that injury. Kevin Gausman has been inconsistent for over a month now, trying to find that splitter, which he's seemingly lost and has kind of been struggling. Pretty much every start has been, he's had to labor through it since mid-July. And then the one kind of consistent bright spot for the Giants has been Logan Webb in that rotation. But to be missing Alex Wood and Johnny Cueto, I mean, look at what they had to do last night. It had to be a bullpen game, and we don't necessarily know what they're going to do to cover those innings. Alex Wood, those innings will have to be covered. They could do a bullpen game every time it's his start. They could go with Sammy Long. But if Cueto is also out, then they're going to have some issues. And, it's going to be tough to have a couple of bullpen games a week or every 5 days. So it remains to be seen what they're going to do. As I said, Jose Quintana, who has a lot of starting experience, was claimed yesterday. I don't know if that was like in response to the situation that the Giants are going through, or if they would have claimed him anyway. Giants take on his major league contract. He's on the active roster, and he's an interesting guy. So we're going to talk more about Quintana next. We're going to talk more about this game and the standings and where the Giants stand in all of this next. So stay tuned for that. But before we get into it, I have to tell you that it's that time of year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron to start the football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest and the world's largest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest, open now at BetOnline. Head to their website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus. Be sure to take advantage of their opening day super promo. Make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Buccaneers and Dallas Cowboys, and if you lose, your wager will be refunded up to $25 for new customers only when signing up and using promo code NFL100. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Promo code Locked On. All right, as promised, here in the second half of the show, or excuse me, not the second half, the second segment of the show, we've got a third one coming up. Before we actually talk about that, I keep forgetting to remind the listeners, if you're listening to this on like Apple or Spotify or whatever, but not on YouTube, did you know this show is now available on YouTube? You can watch me watch me talking about what you're listening to right now. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend you check it out on YouTube. The show is Locked On Giants. There's obviously a football Locked On Giants as well, but we are the baseball one, the orange and black, not the blue and whatever colors that New York Football Giants team features. But yeah, check us out on YouTube. And coming up in this second of three segments, we're going to talk about the game last night, the Giants claiming Jose Quintana, the Giants hitting into a lot of bad luck last night, and just how they're matching up against the Brewers, and how, to me, the Brewers are not a team that the Giants or any team would want to face in the playoffs, specifically for the reason we saw last night. Corbin Burnes shut them down. He pitched as well against the Giants as any team has pitched against the Giants all season. He was absolutely dominant. The stuff that Corbin Burnes features is just ridiculous. He's out here throwing, 92-mile-an-hour changeups, 97-mile-an-hour cutters, 99-mile-an-hour four-seamers. It's just nasty, nasty stuff, and he commands it. So that's tough enough to have to face, but then they've got two other aces as well. Thankfully for the Giants, one of them is not going to pitch in this series, I believe. Freddie Peralta, currently on the injured list. I don't think he's supposed to pitch in this series, but we're going to see ace number two tonight in Brandon Woodruff. He's almost equally as tough as Corbin Burnes. A little bit of a different pitcher, not quite as overpowering, but just as effective and still overpowering. So, the Giants are going to have their hands full again tonight. And even if Cueto can make the start, it's kind of a mismatch on paper, as it was last night. I mean, it was supposed to be Cueto. Even if it was Wood versus Woodruff, that is a mismatch on paper. So Giants are going to have their hands full in this series. And again, this is not a team that the Giants or any team would want to have to face in the playoffs. But that being said, I mean, they would be happy to be in that situation. I don't want to make it sound like the Giants are scared of any team, but I'm just saying the Brewers are kind of a smaller market team. They kind of do it in a way like the Rays and like the A's. They don't do it with spending a lot of money, but they have built up a very scary playoff caliber team. So anyway, I want to talk about let's just go with Quintana, because it is very interesting that the Giants claimed Quintana yesterday. He is a guy who I was talking about as a potential target in the offseason for the Giants to sign. Ended up signing for 1 year, $8 million with the Angels, and his season there was a disaster. In 53 and a third innings, he had a 6.75 earned run average, which is obviously terrible. He had a 4.31 fielding independent pitching, which is much better than that ERA, but still not that good. It's actually right around league average. But the expected fielding independent pitching was just 3.67. So that's kind of saying if he was allowing a normal rate of home runs per fly ball, that he would have a better ERA, like a 3.67, which is about 15% better than average. But according to the StatCast data, he did have a 5.08 expected ERA. There's a number called Sierra, and that number was also actually pretty good at 3.90. So a lot of kind of variability here to his numbers. He was either like terrible by some kind of results-based numbers, but there's some numbers that are suggesting he should have been significantly better. And so I would put, money on the Giants being able, among any team, to get the most out of this guy. And there's some really intriguing trends with him as well. Like, for example, his strikeout rate has shot up significantly from where it was. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's now been pitching out of the bullpen a lot. But I mean, when he was starting with the Cubs in, 2017, 18, 19, he was rolling with a strikeout rate around 20%. And the last couple of years, pitching at least a lot of the time out of the bullpen, that strikeout rate has shot up to around 30%. So, an uptick in the strikeout stuff from Quintana, and that's intriguing. Strikeouts are, a huge part of how players have success in the modern game. But at the same time, the results just weren't there. He just wasn't getting it done in terms of preventing runs, and that's ultimately the name of the game. And as I look through his kind of velocities and any trends with throwing different pitches and pitch usages, his fastball velocity hasn't really ticked up. In fact, it's kind of down from the peak of his career. He's always been around 92 miles an hour for an average fastball, and that's been the case this year as well, 91.6. And his fastball usage hasn't really changed either. He's around 60% with the fastball. Slider, it looks like this year he introduced a slider, which he hadn't thrown since 2019, and that was the only time he was throwing a slider. Has ditched the cutter since 2016. Curveball usage declined this season. Changeup usage has gone up. So I don't know exactly what the Giants plan to do, but he's an interesting and worthwhile guy to just claim off waivers. It's another example of the Giants not being cheap. I think a lot of people have accused them of being cheap just for kind of the smaller moves and not necessarily the huge moves that they have made. I mean, acquiring Bryant and taking on all of his remaining salary, and now acquiring Quintana and taking on all of his remaining salary. They're just making whatever moves they can make to put themselves in the best position to win baseball games. And I think Quintana is interesting and a worthwhile guy to give a shot to, especially with their starting rotation in the condition that it's in, with these players being put on the injured list yesterday, Wood and Cueto. So we didn't really get a chance to get into the game itself last night and the Giants hitting into bad luck. So we'll have to save that for the next kind of segment of the show when we'll talk about the the game itself and how many different times the Giants hit into severe bad luck. And we'll also talk about, as I have promised, how the Giants really match up against this team and their position in the standings and why I think it's still the Dodgers' division to lose. And I know that's going to rub some people the wrong way, I would imagine, but I'll explain why I see it that way. But before we get into all that, does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called Directv Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with Directv Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the exact same auto parts at a chain store or car dealership? You can seriously ask the dealership what the part is that your car needs, order it at rockauto.com, and have the dealership install it if that makes you more comfortable, but you're going to pay more if you ask the dealership to buy it themselves. So there's really no need to do that. RockAuto.com is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. So go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now to see all the parts available to your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. All right, as promised, we're finally going to get into what I've been saying, talking about the game last night. It was a disappointing 3-1 loss for the Giants. I would say it was pretty impressive that the game was as close as it was, and the Giants had so many opportunities to potentially tie the game or go ahead, despite the extreme mismatch on paper with Corbin Burnes, who may win the NL Cy Young Award, starting for the Brewers, and the Giants going with a bullpen game and giving up a couple runs in the first 2 innings. Actually, did they? Yeah, 1 run in the first, 1 run in the second. So the fact that the Giants very well could have won this game actually kind of speaks volumes to their competitiveness. But ultimately, I give the Brewers pitching staff credit. Like, it wasn't just a coincidence that the Giants only scored 1 run, and the Brewers pitching had a lot to do with it. The Giants couldn't really get anything going against Corbin Burnes. They had a couple of chances, and the bullpen, the Giants put themselves in position to score against Boxberger, Williams, and Hader, but they couldn't really do anything with it. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the bad luck. Like, for example, the Giants had runners on the corners with 2 outs for Darren Ruff in the bottom of the 7th inning. They had even a better opportunity than that. I think they had scored 1 run, so it was 2-1 at that point, and they had 2 on and no outs. So they were in a really good position to at least tie the game, but then Mike Yastrzemski grounded out on a check swing. Brewers just barely got a force out at second base with I think it was Urias clinging to the bag with his toe and reaching full on extending to catch the ball and get the force out. And then after that, Alex Dickerson, probably the critical at bat of the game, with an opportunity to score a runner from third with less than 2 outs. He gets completely jammed and ends up popping out. And so that run is not able to score. But then Darren Ruff pinch hitting, you feel good about it. And honestly, like, this is against a right-handed pitcher, Brad Boxberger. And I kind of think that they like having Darren Ruff on the bench so they can deploy him at a time when the game is on the line and you need a good at-bat, and he gave them that. But this is kind of a side note, but I feel like he probably deserves to be making some starts even against right-handed pitching, perhaps even over Alex Dickerson. But that's not how they roll. They're just going to continue to give Dickerson those chances. It's hard for me to say he's proven his ability to hit right-handed pitching, because this year he just hasn't been able to get it going. But last year counts too. The year before that counts too. So I understand what they're doing there. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that when I say it. But anyway, this Darren Ruff at bat, he ends up hitting the ball 107.6 miles per hour, just a rocket at a 18-degree launch angle. If he had elevated that ball just a little bit more, that is in the seats. Anything over 95 miles an hour is considered hard hit. So 107.6 was actually the 3rd highest exit velocity of the entire game last night, and it had an expected batting average of 710, meaning similar batted balls are a hit 71% of the time. And with the tying run on third and the go-ahead run on first, the Giants would take a 71% chance that ball was going to find grass. And if it did, it probably would have been in a gap somewhere, and the Giants could have taken the lead in that bottom of the 7th inning. But instead, it goes right to Yelich. I mean, credit to the Brewers' positioning, and that ended the threat. And this was kind of a theme all night for the Giants. Lamont Wade Jr. hit 2 balls north of 105 miles an hour, 107 and 105, each with expected averages over 58%. One of them at 72%, even higher than Ruff's hit probability, and then his other one at 58% hit probability. So, yeah, and the line out came with runners on base as well, and a chance to at least score a run. I can't remember the exact situation. I could pull it up, but I know there were guys on base with that line out that had a 72% chance of being a hit. based on similar batted balls. So anyway, that was not even it. There was a couple more even than that. And the Giants just had no luck to show for their hard hit balls last night. And against this Brewers team and against the caliber of pitchers they were facing, if those balls are finding gloves, you're in trouble. And that's exactly what happened. So as I have said, the Brewers are a tough opponent. And definitely, like, if the Giants somehow, and I say somehow, but they're in a good position, but if they somehow make it to the NLCS, you very well could end up seeing the Brewers. There's still a chance that the Brewers could end up with the top record in the league, and I might even argue that is something the Giants would want to happen. I think ideally the Giants win the division and the Brewers actually finish with a better record, because if the Giants win the division in that case and the Brewers have the best record in the league, and the Dodgers are in the wild card game, and let's say the Dodgers win the wild card game, that would mean the Brewers play the Dodgers in that first round, and the Giants would play, as it is now, the Braves. And I think that Giants would rather play the Braves than the Dodgers in the first round of the playoffs. There's a lot of different scenarios at play, but this is if the Giants win the division. And of course, the Dodgers, if the Giants win the division, could lose the wild card game. And right now that opponent would be the Reds. And I think the Giants would rather play the Reds than the Braves. And so, it's kind of hard to say what you would prefer. I think you just go out there and play. Obviously, the Giants are just trying to win every game, because winning the division is 10 times more valuable than just making it as a wild card team. But the fact is, I still consider the Dodgers to be the favorites in the division, especially now that the Giants' lead is just 1.5 games. And I'm going to explain why really quick. First of all, I mean, the talent on the Dodgers is undeniable. They're just absolutely loaded, and it's just worth pointing out they have a plus 211 run differential compared to just plus 145 for the Giants. That's a great run differential for the Giants, but it's not even close to what the Dodgers are rolling with, which is the best in Major League Baseball. So the Dodgers are underperforming their expected win-loss record by 5 games. Giants are overperforming theirs by 3. And so looking at these numbers, I believe that the Dodgers are still the favorites in the division, and it's theirs to lose. And so I don't know. I mean, I just think we have to have that expectation that it's not going to be easy to win this division, and that if the Giants end up losing it, it's not going to be, to me, some massive disappointment. I know that they've held on to it for so long, for so many consecutive days, but it's hard to, talent wins out over the course of 162 most of the time. And as good as the Giants are legitimately, the Dodgers, it's hard to deny that they have a better talent. They have more talent on that roster. So I know some of you aren't going to want to hear that, but that's just how I see it. And with about 30 games remaining, I still consider them the favorites. But this series, I mean, if the Giants can find a way to sweep this upcoming series, then they could completely turn that around. So it's going to be huge. And that's why losing these pitchers right now is potentially a really big deal, because, you want to be able to put your best team out there when you're facing your top opponents. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Coming up tomorrow, we'll talk about any more updates with these, potentially with a COVID outbreak. Hopefully not, but I'm sure everybody's getting tested and they're paying very close attention to that. And also, if Cueto's able to start, we'll break down the game. We'll break down the Dodgers results and any other teams that are relevant to the Giants. So once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. You can follow me on Twitter at Ben Kaspick. That's KASPICK. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.